As America and Europe are going through perturbed times of racial injustices and systematic racism, it is comforting to return for stories of courage. Now more than ever, we need to hear the story of Bilal again and again. Bilal Ibn Rabah is considered one of the most distinguished names in Islamic history. His story is one of the most cited and most notable stories of Islam's respect for human equality, anti-racism, and social equity. Bilal was a black slave from Habasha, modern-day Ethiopia. A son of an Arab father and an Ethiopian mother. His mother was an Ethiopian princess who was forced into slavery and got married to another slave. Bilal was born in Mecca. Due to its prevalent injustices including racial injustice, the period before the coming of Islam is called Jahiliyyah, a period of ignorance, in Arabia. Racism was one of the first priorities that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, stood against. Bilal became one among the first groups of believers in Islam. He joined the community of believers while he was still a slave to Umayyah ibn Khalaf. Umayyah was one of the elites of Mecca and one of the biggest enemies of the Prophet Muhammad. When Umayyah knew about Bilal's conversion to Islam, he tortured him by tying him in the house and depriving him of food and drink. They would make him face the idols, shouting, "Worship the idol, you son of a black woman." Bilal persists and would not abide. Umayyah then put a collar on him and dragged him, while mocking him, through the public to the desert. He would start whipping Bilal in public, trying to make him renounce his new faith. Bilal would only say, "Ahadun Ahad, one, one," denoting the oneness of God. All Bilal knew was that there is one God, and idols cannot be worshipped. Umayyah wanted him to regret and denounce his new belief. However, we know Bilal to be Bilal today because of his steadfastness and courage towards fear and oppression. He never uttered the words Umayyah wanted him to utter, even with big rocks on his chest. Bilal was then bought and freed by Abu Bakr, who was sent by the Prophet. From this moment on, Bilal becomes one of the most respected and beloved companions of the Prophet. He rose to prominence as he earned a position of honor among the companions and was very loved and respected by the Prophet. There are many times when the Prophet Muhammad would want to be left alone and the only person he would allow to stay near him was Bilal. According to Islamic tradition, Bilal was a tall man whose thin beard barely covered his cheeks. Some said that he had sparkling eyes, a fine nose, and bright skin, and that he was also gifted with a deep, melodious, resonant, and vibrant voice. After years of torture, starvation, and besiegements, the Prophet advised the Muslim community to immigrate to Medina. In Medina, at the request of the Prophet, Bilal became the first caller to prayer, Muezzin, because he had a beautiful voice. The Prophet of Islam is considered to be, arguably, the first anti-racist in human history. Prophet Muhammad was the first person in human history to declare, in no uncertain terms, that no person is above another by virtue of race or ethnicity. There is an occasion where one of the Prophet Muhammad's companions calls Bilal, "O you son of a black woman." The Prophet Muhammad's rebuttal to this attitude was swift. The Prophet turns to the man asking him, "Are you taunting him about his black mother? There is still some influence of ignorance in you." The ignorance the Prophet alluded to was a trace of the Jahiliyyah period. Ever since the Prophet Muhammad's teachings on racial equality and racial justice have inspired the Muslim world and humanity at large to strive for racial equality and justice for all. Bilal had a lot of love for the Prophet. After the Prophet's death, he could not call for prayer anymore, because he would have to mention the Prophet's name in it. He therefore could not stay in Medina and asks Abu Bakr to allow him to leave. Abu Bakr, the one who freed Bilal, was now the first caliph of Islam. Abu Bakr tells Bilal that he needs him here in Medina. Bilal responds and says, "O Abu Bakr, if you freed me for yourself then keep me. But if you freed me for the sake of God, let me go." Abu Bakr allows him to leave. Bilal leaves Medina and comes back once. the two grandsons on the Prophet Muhammad asked Bilal to call for the prayer. Bilal could reject what they asked and goes on to call for the prayer. As he starts calling for the prayer, everybody in the city pours in the mosque thinking the Prophet is back. If not, what is Bilal doing here? How is it then that calls for prayer? The next time Bilal calls for prayer would be in Al-Quds in Jerusalem in the time of the second caliph, Omar bin Khattab. Afterward, with Muslim conquests reaching modern-day Syria, he also reached Syria. He passed away between 638 and 642 in Syria. Some other sources say in Jordan. Bilal gained a very high status in Islam and among the Muslim communities in the world. Omar bin Khattab, Islam's second caliph, would call Bilal Sayyiduna, our master. When he would mention his predecessor Abu Bakr, he would say, our master who freed our master, denoting Bilal. Bilal is the first to call for prayer in Medina, Mecca, and Jerusalem, the three holiest places in Islam. It was from Bilal that the tradition of sounding the call to prayer from a rooftop and making the call melodious started, which is now considered as a form of art, and it is most prevalent in Turkey. Hence Bilal is considered as the chief or master of all callers of prayer. Generations after, Bilal is still very loved among the Muslim peoples to this day. Many children are named, and being named, Bilal, and whenever his name is mentioned it is uttered as Sayyiduna Bilal, Bilal our master. Prophet Muhammad said, I was shown paradise. I heard the noise of the steps before me, and it was that of Bilal.